Did you know that there are at least 3 different ways to look at any given law? And why does it matter? Because each one of the 3 is based upon perception. Perceptions are what drive our sense of reality, and our sense of reality is what drives the way we interact with law enforcement and other aspects of the justice system. When a person has disdain for the law, it logically follows that they will have disdain for those who enforce the law. This can manifest in anger, resentment, or worst case scenario, outright hatred. But it doesn't stop there. As if the emotions aren't already raw enough, just imagine how it multiplies when the enforcer of the law becomes the law itself, while at the same time being allowed to act without consequence. Well, now the entire system is poisoned, from the enforcer all the way up to those who sit in judgment of us, who themselves are beneficiaries of an utterly corrupt and failed system of justice. I've spoken before about procedural justice. Procedural justice. Do not disrespect the people you serve, and do not violate their constitutional rights. Those 2 precepts are important, they're reasonable, and they're attainable. Yet law enforcement continues to miss the mark. There should not be a single law enforcement officer in this country who, when queried, wouldn't know what the definition of procedural justice is. It's pathetic. The way that Western civilization, which used to pride itself on fighting back against tyranny and oppression, has itself become tyrannical and oppressive. The natural balance of things is seriously out of whack. Let's take a look at the 3 different ways that folks perceive the law, and they don't have to actually have the law in front of them. This is about perceptions and how perceptions play such a pivotal role in establishing our sense of reality, which we then act upon while interacting with law enforcement. And where I'm going to tie this up into a little bow is by saying this. We don't have to be right to think that we're right. People are far more likely to act upon things that they think are true. And if they think it's true, then for all intents and purposes, it becomes their sense of reality. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the foundation they're going to be working off of when they interact with law enforcement. I'll tell you what the worst case scenario is. Public being wrong about the law even though they think they're right. And then you have the officer who thinks they know the law even though they're wrong. I think there's a word for that, and that word might be problematic. So what are the 3 ways that people can look at the same law? Number 1 are those who actually know the law, that the person knows the law, black and white, no wiggle room. Number 2 are those who think they know the law, the person who thinks they know the law even though they're wrong. And number 3 are those who, well, this is the way I think the law should be. In a perfect, just, ideal, and fair world, this is how I think it should be. All 3 can affect compliance. How? Compliance with the law and compliance with the law enforcer. Because if someone is dead set against the law, if it violates their meta values, I mean those that they hold against the heart and soul, that there's a likelihood that, well, the person isn't going to go with the program. You know, there's one name that popped into my head, and I'm absolutely serious. It wasn't Claude Dallas, who killed the 2 Idaho game wardens back in '81. No, it's Gordon Kahl from North Dakota. Gordon Kahl had meta values so close to his heart and soul, he was willing to kill over it. And he did just that.
Every time we come out here, you can smell that day.
People seem to forget. This took all of about 30 seconds.
I looked up at him and asked him, well, was it worth it? And he smiled at me and he said, to him it was.
Medina, North Dakota, 1983. 30 seconds of gunfire that changed the lives of everyone who was there and many more who weren't. 20 years later, it remains a story that is tragic and unforgettable.
Authorities say the prime suspect is a radical survivalist, a fanatic, an ultra-right-wing tax rebel.
But out there, he wasn't backing down.
Without a doubt, the shootout between Gordon Kahl and federal marshals in Medina on Sunday, February 13th, 1983 is one of the biggest news stories in North Dakota history. It exposed deep-seated hatred and mistrust by some of the federal government. It's also a story with many shades of gray and, depending on who you talk to, differing views on who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. Steve Schnabel is a former Medina police officer involved in the shootout that day.
There's no simple answer to anything with this incident.
Heaton, North Dakota farmer Gordon Kahl hadn't paid taxes since 1967, was vocal about it, and had served prison time in Texas for not paying. When he came back to North Dakota, he failed to check in with his probation officer. Texas issued a warrant for his arrest. On the day of the shooting, Kahl, his son Yori, friend Scott Fall, and several others were attending a meeting at the Medina Clinic regarding farm foreclosures. Stutsman County Deputy Brad Kapp spotted Kahl's vehicle and called the Marshal's Service. U.S. Marshal Ken Muir of Fargo decided this would be the day to finally arrest him. Muir and Deputy Marshal Carl Wigglesworth drove from Fargo to meet up with Deputy Marshals Bob Cheshire and Jim Hobson driving from Bismarck. As Kahl's people left the clinic in 2 cars, Cheshire's Ram Charger began following. Muir and Schnabel, who by now had agreed to help the marshals, set up a roadblock north of town to prevent escape.
You're going to have to stop both these vehicles. We're bringing up the rear. You got 2 station wagons coming at you. He was wearing blue and blue jacket, blue pants. We're behind the second station wagon. We're just crossing the tracks.
But as they were driving north out of Medina, the Kahl party turned into this road leading to the Reardon family trailer home. As they attempted to turn around, Cheshire blocked their escape, and it was then the arrest attempt was made. But Kahl's party didn't surrender. Instead, Gordon, his son Yori, and Scott Fall exited the vehicle, set up a perimeter with guns pointed, and a tense standoff ensued.
We're looking right in the face of these guys. Let's go.
Wigglesworth ran into the north grove of trees to cut off Scott Fall, but got stuck in a slushy bog. Meanwhile, Muir and Schnabel eventually drove up to the scene when suddenly a shot was fired. What followed was 30 seconds of intense gunfire that left Muir and Cheshire dead, Hobson with permanent brain damage, Kapp, Schnabel, and Yori Kahl wounded, and Gordon and Scott Fall on the run. The law enforcement officers involved were heavily outgunned by the Kahl party's rapid-fire Mini-14 rifles.
Within months of the Medina shootout, fugitive Gordon Kahl and Arkansas Sheriff Gene Matthews killed each other in a case of mutual combat. There are those who know the law, and there are those who think they know the law. Gordon Kahl falls into the third category. Oh, he knew the tax laws, he just chose to ignore them. See, they didn't apply to him. They weren't written the way that he thought they should be. See how that works?